I'm Kim.
And I'm Camille. And this is Enneagram for the Culture, where two dope Black therapists discuss how therapy, Blackness, and the Enneagram come together.
Yay!
Here we are.
Season 4. We've
Interviews.
been doing this for 4 seasons.
Wild. And we're doing it again today.
We're excited. We have our first guest. This is our first, first recording. So we're maybe a little nerves, just getting back into the swing of things, but mostly excited. We're going to be, in this episode, we're talking to one of our 2 guests. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So we got to chat with Kiara, and she shared with us that she identifies as a type 2. And so we wanted to spend a little bit of time refreshing what are the structure and bones of a type 2. So if you remember, we talked about type 2s on episode 6 on both season 1 and 2. So if you want a more robust refresher on what it means to be a 2, then I would check those episodes out. But for the short version, 2s are called or labeled the givers or the helpers. And their basic desire is to feel loved and wanted. Their fear is of being unloved and unwanted, or for them to be alone. And the message that they kind of walk around with is that you are good or okay if you are loved by others and are close to them. They also have messages that say that it's not okay to have your own needs.
And so in our conversation with Kiara, you're going to hear her make reference to her origin story and how she heard about the Enneagram and how she landed on her type structure as a 2. And you're going to hear her mention that a part of that journey for her was an awareness of the levels of development. And so this is something that is not always talked about when it comes to the Enneagram, but it is something that can be really helpful to be aware of. So just a quick explanation. Essentially, those levels of development, they help bring an awareness to us as far as if we're operating in a healthy range, an average range, or an unhealthy range when it comes to how we are identifying with our personality type structure. And so this can be really, really beneficial to be aware of. Again, like you're going to hear Kiara talk about when you're learning about your type. So, for example, you'll hear her share that one of the things that really stood out for her and helped her to know she was a 2 is the descriptions about what it can look like for 2s to be in the unhealthy range. So it can be helpful with typing. And yeah, so the healthy levels of development, you can find them when you're finding more about the Enneagram, and each number has that range of healthy at their best, their healthy version, and then where they're maybe not at their best, so the unhealthy version. And so for 2s in particular, at their best, they can be very unselfish, humble, altruistic. They can feel it is a privilege to be able to be in the lives of others. They're empathetic and compassionate, and they care and are concerned about their own needs. There's a good balance of their own needs and other people's needs. But then on the lower end, when they're at a little bit more unhealthy or in the average range, 2s, we're going to hear words like martyr. We're going to hear words like entitled. We're going to hear words that say that sometimes it can be a need to get repaid for old services that they've given to others. And then resentment can build in that place. And there can be some deception and some manipulation that happens to try and get their needs met that they've ignored because they were helping others. And so, like we said, this can be good for us to keep in mind as we're, trying to grow and be self-aware as an indicator, for ourselves. So again, these levels, they help us to be aware of when we're at with identifying with our type. So if you remember from previous seasons, we've touched on how, the goal with this is not to land on your type and be like, oh, so I'm a 3 and that's just it. That's where it stops. No, we want to learn about this so that we can be aware of how Chi talks about this, how we can tend to cover up. Like if we're not feeling safe with that, sometimes I can over-identify as a 3, and that can be unhealthy. I'm losing sight of and touch with, who I truly am outside of achieving and accomplishing. So it can be really helpful for us to know for ourselves, but also in relationships. So, if as you're in connection with your friends or your family, when you're able to recognize that maybe some of those indicators or some of those patterns that let you know that maybe they're not doing too great. You know, maybe they are grappling with some things in life that are just impacting their stress levels. And so it can help us to be more compassionate, maybe give us some direction as far as how to like show up and be supportive to those in our people in our lives. So both as individuals, this can be good. And then also in our relationships.
So with that being said, let's jump into the interview with our dear friend, Kiara. Our first guest of the season that we're recording is my friend, Kiara Ruth. And Kiara is a master at multitasking and simplifying. She gracefully juggles her life as a mother and wife with her presence as a writer and North Carolina tastemaker. Kiara drifts from mom to mogul effortlessly because she remains authentic and true to her brand in every step. This authenticity means telling her story truthfully, acknowledging faults, and being transparent while growing and learning. Kiara is a mom to Miles, who is 10 years old, and the wife to Dr. Terrence Ruth, who is a Raleigh mayoral candidate and a professor at NC State University. Kiara and her family have a cute rescue dog named Oakley. Yes. Hello.
Hey, I don't know. Thank you. I literally got the chills while you were reading that. I don't know why. It's just like, what? That's me.
That's you. I got it too. Like I didn't read it before. And that happened last season. Like that was like probably one of our favorite parts is like reading bios for like our amazing guests.
Yes, I loved reading that again. And it reminded me how much we love reading bios.
This is a bio podcast.
We said that. We said last year we should just have an episode of just continuous bios of amazing Black people. Like how good that will be. So we loved it. I love the line of mother to mogul effortlessly. I was like, yes, that is her.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me. I mean, it's such an honor to be the first episode. Like, no pressure at all.
None. None at all.
None at all. And then also in your bio, that word mayoral. How do you say that? Mayoral.
Mayoral?
Yeah. Mayoral. There it is.
Mayoral. There
Like
it is.
So I could have put mayor of Raleigh, but like I had to speak too much.
Yes. Speak it.
Yeah, teach the folks, teach the people, help us to learn, new words and how to pronounce them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And then the other fun thing before we jumped on was we had this whole fiasco, if you will, not fiasco, but Kiara shows up in these headphones, as you can see, and she's telling us that these are gaming headphones.
They are.
So tell us about these headphones.
So I read the thing. Obviously, you guys will learn this about me. I do exactly what the instructions say. So when it said have headphones, I was like, the only headphones that I have are the ones that I pay for my son. So I like, Miles, I need your help. And he comes in here, he plugs them in. You guys didn't know this, but I actually had them on backwards. So I couldn't get this thing to come down the first time. That's why this thing was up. And then I'm like, I can't hear them. And so my son comes in and he shows me how to turn it up, found out the volume is here and not underneath here. I mean, didn't it used to be underneath here when you guys were kids? Like the volume?
It used to, there used to be like a slide, like, you'd slide it.
What in the expensive is this? Like, so he comes in and helps me. And now we're here and I have these gaming headphones on that I'm actually getting the opportunity to use that I spent God knows how much on.
I'm glad he let you borrow them too. Thank you, Miles.
And for his technical assistance.
Yeah. He comes in here like, what do you mean you need help with the volume? And okay. He's like, you don't already know how to do this? I'm like, no.
You look really cool.
Sweet. I think you look cool.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it looks
Talking
really
about looking. So that's something new. Like you're like people, you're probably able to see us and we haven't offered that before. So
oh, yeah.
Hi.
All right.
You want to jump in?
Let's jump in.
So we're going to start with how the Enneagram has shown up for us. This is something that we've been doing each season. So I'll start and then Kiara, do you have a way? We didn't even check in with you to see. Do you have a way that your Enneagram type has shown up for you this week?
Yeah, I mean, when I read the question, I was like, oh, it's such an intentional question that I'm like, I didn't realize that my life is like this. Like, this is how I show up. And so, yes, I have a bunch. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll go first. Mine's pretty quick. I actually think I did not sleep as like solid as I have been last night because I might have been a little excited about this morning and us kicking off today. And so when I did wake up before my alarm clock, which is not typical, I immediately started thinking, okay, so we're going to start recording at this time. So I need to get up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to clean the kitchen. I'm going to make my coffee and I'm going to I just started to map out my morning to make sure I was in place, on time. And so the part as far as how my Enneagram ties into that, like I said, it's not because I woke up before my alarm because normally I'm snoozing. And it's not because I was on time because normally I'm a few minutes late. It's mostly that like kind of keeping an agenda with timestamps, which Camille, I don't remember which season it was, but you mentioned that about threes. And ever since you did, I have been much more aware of how that does happen. So yeah, that's how it showed up for me.
Kiara, how about you? What have you noticed in the last couple of days, weeks of your two-ness, right? I think I just let the cat out of the bag, right? Your two-ness, how has that shown up for you?
You know, I heard Kimberly talk about like her doing things for herself. And I think my Enneagram shines better when I'm doing things for others. And so even sitting here, I went down a list of things that I've already done for other people this week, because those are the things that fuel me. And so it just kind of brought me back to yesterday. Actually, I met with two friends back to back. I was thinking like, oh my gosh, I have so much work to do, but let me go ahead and one of my friends, she couldn't meet on one day. So we ended up moving it to Monday. And I was like in 2 coffee meetings at the same coffee shop back to back. And they were just kind of sharing a lot of stuff with me and just kind of walking them through like my experiences and just kind of hearing their side of the story and me kind of giving more of myself to them and pushing a lot of like what I had to do kind of like down. And so, obviously we'll tap into that a little bit deeper, but yeah, so really what fuels me is showing up for people. And that's how things went. And I'm actually genuinely happy. Like, it's like, I know it sounds weird, but it fuels me in a lot of ways. And then I get to come home late and work all night because I've given. You know what I mean? So
Doesn't sound weird.
Does not sound weird.
Sounds like, sounds like a dope two.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a two of like the fuel that you get from doing that. And I think that that's what's so special. I know I've been a recipient of that with you, our coffee dates and the time that we've gotten to spend together. And yeah, it definitely is genuine. Like you're saying, it's not that I'm, not wanting to do that. It's fuel for me, and it definitely comes through.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Okay. So with the Enneagram, like, can you tell us a little bit about how you even learned about the Enneagram? We like to say, like, what's your origin story, of learning that you were an Enneagram too?
I actually think it was like 2020 or like 2021 when we were all kind of like at home. If I remember correctly, someone was like, hey, you should take this test. And I was just like, it's 30 minutes? Like, that's what I was thinking in my head. But I was able to kind of move through the test in a good amount of time. But I guess someone may have sent it to me, or maybe I seen someone sharing something on social media and I started reading about the different types. And I was like, I think I might be this. And I was all wrong. So
do you remember what number you thought you were?
I thought it was a 7.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And then it said 2.
Yep. 2 and wing 3, I guess. Yeah.
And did that land, like when you read the 2 description and learned about the 2, were you like, yes, this is correct?
It is. I think what really resonated with me the most was what I'm like at my worst as a 2. And I was like, oh, Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I think that's what really, I was like, okay, because I started out reading what I am like at my worst. And then I went to like, oh, what am I like as my best? And then I was like, okay, makes a lot of sense. So,
so much courage you have for that. I think that's the part that, like, when I read that, that's when I was like, nah, I'm not messing with this tool. I don't know I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah.
But it was, pretty accurate. Do you mind, like, we're putting you on the spot, but do you mind sharing? Like, what were some of the things that stood out to you as far as like what resonated with you as far as when you're
at my worst? Yeah, I think one of the things that's very important to me is to feel valued in how I'm giving to people, or to feel seen in that. And at my worst, I will give. I will go above and beyond. And if you do not acknowledge that I went above and beyond for you, I spiral. It is like the scene out of Inside Out when the things is just moving in a circle. I'm like, am I not good enough? Did he not see? Yeah. I just went in there and I made that coffee. I used of this time. Like, and it's like that. Like, I went, and it's like little things. And so I was like, wow. But it was such a mirror for me to recognize, like, when I'm getting that way, that like, hey, that means your heart posture is in the wrong place because you're making this about you. And so I'm like, okay, like, and so I'm able to, I get it now. Like, and so I think one of the things that's been helpful for me, and that's just really guarding my heart around it and like really checking myself, like saying, if I give this time away, like, does this really fuel me? Or is it, I call it my best yes. Is this my best yes? And if it's not, then it's going to have to be a no. So.
I like that. My best yes. And if it's not my best yes, then it's going to have to be a no. That's really good. I might be tucking that away for myself, for clients. Like, that is a really great check, like meter, like you said, a check in with yourself. Is this my best yes? And then if not, it's going to have to be a no. And that's kind of harsh. Like, that's a, like, if it's not my best yes, it's a no. That's a really good boundary. Like, because sometimes we can have like a medium yes or I guess yes. But it's like the standard of my best yes, is a really good standard.
And I don't want to take credit for that, by the way. I might have read that somewhere, but I've been living by it since I read it. So,
so it's like, as lived out by. Oh my gosh, that's great.
Important too. I mean, because twos especially, I mean, all of us, but twos especially, kind of like, what you're saying, being such givers, having such an awareness of like what other people might need or how we can care for other people. No's can sometimes be a little tough for givers. And so for you to have read something or wherever you got it, that resonated with you enough to like continue to like, almost like kind of tuck that away and into it when you need to. I love that for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So can you tell us how you recognize that your two-ness, you being a giver, you being a helper, how that intersects with your Blackness?
Yeah, I really had to think deeply about this question, right? Because it's like, oh, that's kind of deep, right? I think for me, I guess it brings me back to 2020 and me being around people and having friends who don't look like me. And I was a person that they came to for this safe space. And I'm trying to navigate what it means to love them well, but also what it means to hold them accountable. Because normally I would be the person to be like, oh, it's okay. Like, yeah, come to me. You can da-da-da-da-da. But I think going back to 2020, I was exhausted because I was holding space for my white friends or people who didn't look like me. I was holding space for them. And it was just bogging me down so much that like I couldn't even pour back into my own cup. And I didn't know how to say, hey, that's too much. Like, we probably shouldn't say that. Like, like that's not that. You said, what? No, I'm not the person for that. But because I was a people pleaser, because I was wanting to show them grace and mercy and all of these things, man, I felt like who I was kind of being washed, like just diluted. And so I see it show up a lot in that way. But then also too, like that was like one big one. But then even how I show up in spaces, like I'm not walking in fully as like who I'm called to be, because I'm trying to acclimate to whatever climate and things that are happening right now, that like I can't say like code switching is something that I have done a lot, or how I wear my hair, how like all these things that I'm trying to do to fit in, have really been hard for me. It's just really been hard. And then I have a husband who's running, and like we're always in these different type of situations. And so, man, I feel like being a 2 is I adjust well, but I do it to suppress more of who I am, because I want to be able to be valued in the space that I'm in, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's making sense, but
Definitely does.
And so, yeah, I think that is the like kind of more of the dark side of it. But I think in the brighter sides of like, man, like I love being able to walk into space and see my sister, or even see someone and be like, yo, like, how can I support you right now? Like, how can I put, like, I'm here for you. Like, this is a safe space. Like, come on, let's go deep. Let's dive deep. Let's get down in there. And you haven't eaten today. Let me love you well. Let me make you some macaroni and cheese, like that, like little things like that really make me feel seen, like make my people feel seen. I think those are the things that I love. And so I know what it means to be Black and be an Enneagram 2. And I know what it means to just be an Enneagram 2, because you're just like, it feels like a lot, because you're trying to please everybody,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. You're just what you just said of like, I know what it feels like to be a Black Enneagram 2. And then I know what it feels like to be an Enneagram 2, like is like the thesis of our entire podcast.
Absolutely.
That just like sums up why we made this podcast, what we talk about on this podcast, of like, there's a different layer to it of being an Enneagram 2 and then being a Black Enneagram 2. And then to put it into the context of something like 2020, what it means to be a Black Enneagram 2 in 2020. And that's another layer that still resonate. Like that was 4 years ago, and it still comes up very easily in your mind of, I remember that time. Because it was heavy. And like you said, it was hard to navigate. And even the remnants of that now, of having to still navigate that, is real. That's so real. Like you said, it's a dark side, but I was like, but that's the real side. Like, so real.
Yeah. It's super real.
I think, so the aspect of that, the specific to your Blackness, like, kind of referencing what coming into spaces and knowing that there's a bit of a like holding back or suppressing that's going to have to happen until, you kind of gauge if it's a safe space, who's in the space, like, if it's okay. Like, I feel like that's something that, that so many of us experience. In a recent conversation, we were talking about how we recognize that that's something that, is kind of specific to being a black person, a Black woman, especially when it comes to 2s. The kind of narrative about 2s is that, they're just kind of naturally and sometimes immediately like really open and warm and giving and nurturing and pouring out. And it's like, well, but for Black people, like depending on where you're at, who like that doesn't, you don't necessarily feel safe to come across that way. And so, yeah, we just don't take for granted, the vulnerability and sharing those experiences. So thank you.
Yeah. How do you, this is not on our list, but in that, because a thing that we talk about a lot with twos, and it came up for me when you were talking about 2020 and like you navigating caring for some of your friends that didn't look like you, but then you're a mom, you're a wife, like to a Black little boy and a Black husband. You're a Black woman. Like, how do you navigate back then and then even now, making sure that you do take care of you and your own? Because we know that sometimes twos can, like, and you alluded to this, like, I can give so much to other people. I can say yes to these coffee dates and then forget about my work. Not forget, but push down my work. And so, yeah, how do you take care of you? How do you make sure that you do that?
Yeah. So since the beginning, one, obviously prayer is like the top thing. Like, I'm just like super rooted in that. Like, I'm like, God, I need you to go before me. But as far as my home goes, obviously as a two, I thrive in nurturing and all of these things, but my home is a safe haven for my husband and my son. And so whatever, I guess I would say like negativity or things out there that are causing us to have a shift in our perspective or whatever, when they come into my space, our home, I'm like, yo, this is safe. This is a safe zone. This is a place where I want to love you well. I want to care for you. If you've had a bad day, I've even told my husband, if you're on the phone, I need you to get off the call before you come in. And it's not so that I can end whatever it is that you guys are talking about. It's just so that you can understand that you're entering into a new space. And on this side of the door, these are the things that I've laid out for us. And it comes with a lot of like setting the tone, whether it be lighting candles or making sure I tell Miles, I'm like, make your bed every day. Just these little things that I can do to remind me that, like, with Miles, like, hey, we don't have chaos here. This isn't a chaotic place. If he's having a behavior issue, I'm like, hey, I want to be gentle with you. I understand that this is a issue that you're having right now, but we don't have to be at odds. Let's sit down, let's talk. And so I've found in motherhood for me, it's just been like, one, Miles is such a sweet, kind, gentle kid. And so discipline isn't as something that I've tapped into as much, but we found a way to really talk through things. And I think me being a two, I just genuinely want to be there for him. I genuinely want him to know that, like, hey, like, I love you and let's talk about it. But I would say as a type two, and if I'm not well, I'm like, I cannot discipline you today. Let's go shopping. Like, I'm just trying to, like, don't be mean to me. Let's just go and I'll buy you some Jordans. Like, it's literally like, it's like that. Like, it's like total, it's different. Right. Yeah. And for my husband, it's like, he's so busy with everything. And if I'm not careful, I would be very silent. I would just go with the flow. Things will be moving and shaking around him. He doesn't know how the laundry got done, how things are happening. He's just existing. And so sometimes as a two, I have to really sit down with him and say, hey, can we talk about this? Like, can I help? Like, can I help? Like, is there any, we haven't, because I can go with the flow so much and I'm people pleasing and I know he's busy and I don't want to step on his schedule. I don't want to do all, but then I have to come back to myself and I have to be like, you need something. You need him to see you. You need him to see your value. And I will say, when I'm unhealthy, it comes out in different ways. I'm like withholding stuff, right? Like, I'm like, I'm not we're not doing this. We're not going there. But when I'm healthy, I'm like, hey, here's what I need. And I need you to love me well right now because I've been doing, and I don't feel seen. And obviously I'm still working on it, right? Like I could be silent for 3 days and I'm like, I probably should say something, but it's that part of me that's like, I don't want to ruffle any feathers.
Yeah.
I want my husband to feel safe in our home. And I don't want what we have created here to shake up anything. Mm-hmm. And so I've had to find ways to be firm, but also like still, say what I need to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I want to live in your house. That's what I would. That's the way that it sounds like you created, like you said, a safe haven, a peaceful haven. And what a way, like the gifts of a two have probably helped that. Like where, the laundry's done and there's food and there's candles and
macaroni and cheese.
There's macaroni and cheese. There's sometimes Jordans.
If my son has anything to do, it's always Jordans. I'm like, trees. No.
And so just love that, like your home, the way that you have created it and like have even set boundaries and rules with that of like, hey, we're off the phone when we come in the door. And when we're in this space, these are the rules we live by. And it sounds like rules of kindness and peace and rules of collaboration of let's talk about it. And so I don't know that again, I want to move in. Like, let me come over.
Listen. It ain't always unicorn and rainbows, but when I can I try my best. I try my best. I'll say this. My mom was here a few weeks ago. And I'm a two through and through. So my mom comes, she's telling me all this stuff she wants to do. I'm like, yeah, we can make that happen. I'm like, oh, that's a lot of money, but we'll make it happen. Like I'm thinking about all these things that she's asking me to do. And I was talking to a friend and she asked me and she's just like, how is this going to fuel you? Like, what is it? And she's like, what do you want from this? Like, and I think Camille, you might've asked me that too. Like, what do you want from this visit? And I just said, I just want us to have a good time. I just want things to be peaceful. And my mom, when she came to visit me, she was on the phone with her friends. Cause obviously when my mom comes over, she's like, girl, Kiara's house is clean, honey. You can eat off the floor. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Jesus. Little stuff like that. But the number one thing that she said, I did clean up before she came. But number one thing that she said was that your home is peaceful. And I think for me, it's like the way that I've grown up, my story says something different. And when someone says an affirmation like that, when everything around you has always been chaotic, it's like, you don't have to tell me anything else. Like you welcome anytime, like that is. And so I think as over the years, it has not always been like that. I've had to check myself at the door. I've had to check Miles and check Terrence and like constantly, it's just this overflowing, just constantly going back and forth. But when my mom said that really shifted me in so many ways. And for her to come in my space, and I grew up with her, not knowing that I was a two, not allowing her to just do and say and push and all of that. And for her to come here and say that, I'm like, I think I'm onto something. And it's not nothing that I've done, right? Like for me, it's all God,
Definitely. Definitely. I know. Okay. So before we go, just a few, the way you, spoke about how you respond to your son, I got a little teary, and just if he is, heightened, or like you said, if he's having, behavioral issues, for you to connect with him in a way that relays, that I want to be gentle with you. I just, I can hear the healing and how that will carry forward, like in his life and whatever direction his life goes, just to have that experience. That's just really, really beautiful. And, and also to hear you get to a place where you were like naming in the midst of being so attentive to those that you love and care about, like being aware that you have needs too, you know, and talking about, you know, at times with your husband, like getting to a place where you're like, look, I need to be loved in this way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important for us all. But I find with twos, you know, that can be especially, that can be hard, because you do want to be so supportive and, meet needs that, you know, you can lose touch with the fact that you have your own. So, so yeah, before we got on, Camille was like, you're gonna like Kiara. She's just so kind. And I was like, you know, the way she was responding to her emails, I mean, I just felt like she's just so nice. But definitely, you know, interacting with you and hearing more about, your life and your family and, kind of your inner workings and inner world. You seem like a really genuinely kind person. And
Thank you.
we
Oh,
need
y'all
it.
are so nice. Oh my gosh, can you send my husband that? He already knows. We're not gonna tell him anything. Like, I'm like touching my hair. I'm like, yes.
He's not going to be surprised by that at all. He already knows. He's walking into a house with candles. He knows how to do it.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Like, even right now, like, he know I'm gonna call y'all. He just called me. I'm like, babe, hey, you know, if I would have paused this call and been like, hold on, y'all, I can do that. I'm choosing me right now.
Yeah, because you're like, I'm getting my compliments. I don't have time for you. I love it. So I'm excited for this next question because I just want to, I want to know for you, especially with the way that you've even created your life, but in a more bigger sense, like what's a hope that you have for Black people around growth work, whether it's through the Enneagram or any type of personal development, both individually, like in a small way, but then also, the big way. What's your hope for us?
I think one of my biggest hopes is that, aside from obvious things, I do think that as Black people that we would take advantage of people like you guys, right? That we would go to therapy, that we would really dig deep. I have experienced so much healing. I've been to all type of therapists. They're probably like, Kiara, please don't come back. You got this. But when I tell you the work is so sacred, is so deep, you begin to make these connections. They're like, oh, that's why that triggered me, you know, or that's why this did this. And it's my hope that our people will begin to see the value in therapists, and more specifically Black men, will really take the time to dig deep, so that they can be better people, period. I mean, Black women too. And so that we don't look at it as, oh, I'm not going to go. I don't need that. Like, I got the Lord. Listen, do you think the Lord created therapists for no reason? Like, they're here.
Let them know.
Like, this all a part of what he's doing. Like, this is all a part of your circle of like how you're going to be better. And so I think really tapping into that resource and understanding that, like, they get it. Therapists get it, especially Black therapists get it. And they want to sit with you and whatever it is that you're going through. I think that's like the small thing for me, is really just pushing it and saying, hey, get the help that you need so that you can love you better, so that you can love your family better, so that you can be a better friend. And so that's like a small hope for me. Cause I still hear a lot of my friends like, I don't know, you know, like, I don't know, like, I'm praying about it. I'm like, girl, add a little bit more. Like, you know, like that, these things can help. But my bigger thing that I feel that weighs a lot on me is the generation that's coming after us. You know, my son, he's 10. Obviously, I'm trying to do the best that I can do to raise him in a world it's just not a kind world to Black men, period. And so I often find myself now really doing the work now so that he can be who God has called him to be, who he's meant to be. And my hope is that there are other parents, that there are other people who are loving and raising their kids to be, whoever they're called to be, but that they're really pouring into them the importance of self-care, of taking care of yourself, of having some type of foundation, because it's going to be those people who are going to shift the world for us because we're going to be old. I'm just be real. Like, I'm looking forward to, I'm ready to sit down. But it's like with my son, I asked him often when he's sad, I'm like, do you feel like mommy's enough right now for you? And he goes, I said, or do you feel like you need a therapist? Because I want to make sure that you're getting the best help that you need. And he's like, I think you're enough right now, Mom, but I'll let you know. I'm like, yes, let me know. Like, I want to make sure that he knows that like there are things out there for you that will help you. And so that's my bigger hope. And I know it's so much more deeper than that. I think I've written about it and I've really thought about it for Miles, but I know that he's the next generation of Black men. And as like, I see it as my responsibility to raise him in the way in which, like, I want him to be able to love someone's daughter well.
Yeah.
Like, I want him to be able to walk into a space and see someone and say hello and not be afraid and show up as himself with his locks, right? I want him to be liberated. These are things that I'm like constantly praying over. And I pray that whoever his person is, if that's what he decides to do, whatever, that their parents have done the work too. Mm-hmm. That's just my hope. And I think about it often. I cannot tell you, I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. It's a beautiful hope. It's a beautiful hope. And I think kind of back to your first hope, that on an individual level, healing spaces, specifically therapy with Black therapists, I think that puts us in a position, to experience that second hope because it's us, right? It's you, folks like you who are raising, this next generation. And because you are prioritizing yourself and your needs and your own healing, then, that sets us up to be able to, raise our children in a way that, positions us to be better and to continue to evolve and grow. So, again, kudos to you and your husband for being amazing parents.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's a quote that I really love when I think about therapy, but just in general, it's, when the world within us changes, the world around us changes. And it sounds like that's what you're saying, that like when we're doing this, like when I'm raising Miles like this, when I'm parenting in this way, when I'm encouraging folks to go to therapy, like that's what changes the world around us. And that can, I get very overwhelmed by the ugliness in the world. And I get overwhelmed of what can I do? And how do we change these huge problems and these huge hurts? And what I have to ground in is when the world within me changes, the world around me changes. And that when I can help people as a therapist change their inner worlds, that changes the outer world. And so like what Kim was saying, like when parents are well, then that changes the kids and that changes the next generation. And so your work is no small thing, because it is changing the next generation. The work that you're doing with Miles is changing the next generation, which only is going to create a ripple effect for the change that he's going to create and the change that the people after him are going to create. Like, and that's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I truly, truly appreciate the work that you guys do. I know it is no small task. And I hope this is my 2 coming out. I hope that you guys are taking the time to love yourself well, in the midst of carrying all of what our community has to share, because it's a lot.
Yeah.
And so know that I'm thinking of y'all all the time. Matter of fact, oftentimes in my devotions, it's like pray for people who are caring for the world, right? Like these are things that we forget, that like you guys have a lot that you're carrying. And sometimes you take it home and you don't mean to. You're just like, man, I had that really sat with me. So wishing the same for y'all too, that y'all take care of yourself.
Thank you very much, received.
Thank you.
See what happens when you invite type 2s?
Yes. I do it every time. Every time. Grateful.
My husband's just walking.
It's okay. It's okay. Sorry. It's okay. It's absolutely okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've already spoken quite a bit, about therapy and how much, you believe in it and how it ties in with your hopes for Black people and Black families and the Black community. If you're comfortable, can you share a little bit more with us about your personal relationship with therapy, and specifically, we love to hear about any gems, anything that you said you've done all the therapies. So what's one thing that has really, stood out to you that still resonates with you to this day that you would share?
Yeah. So actually my relationship with therapy kind of started in a disagreement with my husband. He was just like, hey, Kiara, like you're just not like responding like the way that you like what is happening. And so obviously it was a lot of like back and forth and like all these things. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go, because you think I'm crazy. I'm going to go. But what it was like, he was telling me like I should go, but it wasn't in the way that I could receive it. And then I made the decision to do it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of started this whole, like, I can't even explain it. It was like, that makes sense. This is connected to this. Now I understand why I do this. These are my triggers. Like, it was just all of these things just started connecting. And obviously for many reasons, I've seen a few therapists, because maybe one may have moved and then you got to start all the way over. And you're like, what is happening right now? Like, I can't go back. But I think each time that I've gone to someone new, it has just been an opportunity for me to reflect on how far I've come. Because now when I'm talking, I'm like, yeah, like I know this and that and this and that. And they're like, oh, you're very self-aware. And I'm like, well, I've done this before. Like in my head, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, I've done this before, but it was an opportunity for me to be able to say, I'm going to pause here and say something real quick. So one of the things that I realized was that as I was moving through therapy, I didn't realize that I was progressing because I was so comfortable with being broken. How I was showing up in spaces, I was like, I can't do that. Like I'm broken. No, I don't want to heal, because then now it requires me to be accountable to myself and like my actions. And when I wasn't doing therapy, or when I was just beginning therapy, the things that I was doing, I couldn't make sense of them. And so I was okay with doing those things. But therapy it was like a swing of things where it was like, no, like these are things that, Kiara, like, that that's not what you should be doing. You're still operating as a broken Kiara. And so now that I'm like in this space, like of healing, right? Or thriving in my healing and all of this, I now have to remind myself that that's not who I am anymore. And what I've realized is that, sorry if I'm going off a tangent, but what I realized is that a lot of the people that loved me in the beginning fell in love with the broken part of me.
Yeah.
And now that I'm healed, it's a different ball game. And so therapy has kind of like been a mirror for me. But then it's also been so liberating because I'm like, oh, I have the capacity to be healed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be broken for people to see me, because I ran with that story of like, oh, look, like I'm trauma. I'm a abuse survivor. Like, look. Love me, love me, love me, love me. I need. And it's like, you can, like, that person, yeah, she's there, but you can be like healed and whole.
Absolutely.
While still being like, these things don't change. Right. And so that's what therapy really has done, is like, you don't have to necessarily forget, but you're not like, that's not who you are anymore. And it was hard. That was hard because I wanted to be people to feel sorry for me. I wanted to be the, in now that the things that may have shaken me then, I now have the tools.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I'm going down the wrong path. I know, like, these are things that I've learned through therapy. And so started out, I've done EDMR, like I've done all the things. Like I've tried and I'm so thankful now to be in this space. And so I don't know if that answers the first question. And then, yeah.
That beautifully answers all the questions.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. What was the second question?
The second question was gems. Any gems that you've gotten from therapy that resonate with you? And I got a few that I just want to make sure that people heard. Mm-hmm. One, so this whole notion of like having to start over, like you touched on, like something that's, I feel like is really, really important and hard. I mean, therapy is hard, but a really hard element of therapy being like, your therapist we're humans. And so sometimes we have life that happens that for whatever reason, we have to move, like you said, or retire or pivot, or, maybe just the time for us to do our work together, it comes to an end. Mm-hmm. And so then that's a fear that I hear a lot of clients talk about is, but I'm going to have to start over with somebody else and go all the way at the beginning. And so for you to kind of articulate, it's kind of like a reflection, when you start with someone new. I think that's a beautiful way to look at it. In a way, I try to encourage folks to consider that, like, it doesn't have to be a starting all the way over again, because you have grown, you have progressed, you've done a lot of work, regardless of how long it's been. And if you're starting with someone else, it doesn't mean that you have to go all the way back to the beginning and kind of pick up where you are and focus on, what it is that you want your goals to be or what your needs are for that time with that particular clinician. And then also the piece about relationships shifting. This has been coming up a lot lately for me, like just having to validate for folks that as they're doing the work and growing and healing and evolving and like you said, maybe not stuck in how they view themselves, that shifts happen in their relationships, and that can sometimes be hard. But it's a part of the process. It doesn't mean that, you're doing anything wrong. If anything, I think it can be a testament to the beautiful work that you're doing. I tell people, like, it's in my intake paperwork, like in the informed consent, that you should be prepared for there to be some possible shifts in your relationships, and don't, try to sue me when that happens, because it's a part of, again, the healing, the evolution, the progression, the work. So yeah, you definitely gave us gems.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I have no notes. I have nothing to add to that. I think that was just so beautifully said. And so again, just thank you for sharing your heart and your experience of how therapy has been helpful in your journey and evolution. And I actually really also like, sorry, this is something that stuck out to me, is just that, like, you're right, sometimes therapy is also just a reminder of how far I have come. I love those sessions where we're just kind of actually just like rehearsing the progress, like where we're just sort of like, hey, remember when a couple months ago this would have happened? Or what would have happened? What would you have said last time? Like, what would you have said a couple months ago at that conversation? Or would that have happened last year? And for clients to be like, no, that wouldn't have happened, or this is what I would have said, or this was really different. And just to get to, I love getting to celebrate. And it's funny because I just actually had a client recently, and it was a kind of a session. It was like a very rehearsing progress, and it wasn't even a treatment review. It was just things were going really well. And she was kind of just, she kept, and favorite, you're going to be so proud of me, Camille. You're going to be so proud of me. And so like, there was lots of those in this session of things that she had done that she was like, you're going to be so proud of me. So the whole session was this like beautiful look at how much she's grown. And she said something like, gosh, I know this is kind of like a waste of a session. And I was like, no, and sometimes as people, as in our culture in America, as Black people, we think that we always have to be on to the next. Like, what am I doing to progress? What am I doing to get better? And sometimes it's okay to be like, I'm pretty awesome. Like I am that girl. Like I have done this work. I can celebrate. I can pause. I sometimes will have clients. It's actually the same client. She used to read self-help books all the time. I said, no more self-help books. No more. More. There's no more self-improvement. Like, just read some fiction, rom-com novels, please. Because, and so sometimes therapy can be just that. Like what you're saying of like, therapy actually has been a mirror to how much I've grown lately. Sometimes therapy is we're growing and we're grinding and we're working. And then sometimes therapy is dang, I need a place to celebrate the wins that I've had, the growth that I've had, that I don't need to read every self-help book anymore. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah. And I think that's probably why I've seen so many therapists, because I didn't believe that I had made it that far. I was so comfortable with where I was like, there's no way. And when I would get there, they're like, you sound like, you sound, and that to me was like, okay. One of my therapists was like, hey, Kiara, like, love you. I'm going to write you a prescription that says, do not come back. And that was hard, right? Because I'm like, I need, like, there's no way. And so, like you said, it's interesting, especially as Black people, that we don't think that we can, that's available for us.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for reminding me again.
You're welcome.
You good, girl?
Of course.
And I might go back when I'm a little older. When Miles leaves the house, I might have to go to therapy.
And like you said, like that resource is available to us. Like what your hope for Black people was that people know that this resource is available. And so we can go in and out of therapy. That's the other thing. Like that's the resource is available. And like Kim said, we don't have to start over. It can be, hey, Miles is leaving for college. This is what I want to work on. And this is going on in my marriage. This is what I want to work on. It doesn't have to be, 20 years ago when I was 15,
right.
We might not have to do that anymore. We might need to just update, like just let the therapist know, but we don't need to, that's not the work that we're doing right now.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing I thought of as far as like what I wanted to add, that's that celebration piece, or those, like you said, Camille, having those sessions where, we're reflecting and really acknowledging growth and progress. We, for years, like I have heard that termination, like the end of the therapeutic process, is arguably like the most important stage of the process. And I think that that's a huge element of that. So one has been like, so that we can learn to let things end. We can grieve. We can learn how to do that in a safe space with some support. But I also think, a huge part of that is being able to say, look, like when we started, this is what we said we wanted to do. And we've done that. These were your goals, the things you said you wanted to focus on. And like, I love checking off goals with clients. surprised. That's how my Enneagram type is showing up for me. But yes, like that, celebrating and being able to look at our progress. I mean, it makes me really happy.
Yeah.
So
this has been great. I'm like sitting here listening to you, and I am just reminded how cool people are, and just how much I love like talking to people and listening to them. And so this conversation has been just so sweet and good to have as I start the day. And so thank you for sharing with us your thoughts and views and values, and just really beautiful to get to witness.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for thinking of me and having me on the show. I'm so excited. You know, I look forward to telling more people. I'm like, listen, I was on this dope podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where can people find you? Like what do you have coming up that people can connect with you over? Or just in general, how can people stay in contact with you? I'm sure so many people who were listening was like, I need to see more of what she's doing. And so how can people connect with you?
So I am at the Banana Moon on all platforms, except for LinkedIn. I'm Kiara Ruth. And then one of the things that I have coming up, type 2, I am partnering with a children's like design party planner called Hot House Boutique, or Hot House Kids. And we're doing an event to support children in foster care. And it's just an opportunity for the kids to come and experience a birthday style party that they probably wouldn't otherwise be able to experience. This isn't something that we're like marketing or anything like that, but it'll be at the Bradford. And I look forward to watching the kids just have a good time. And so that's something big that's coming up for me in the next couple of weeks. And obviously if you follow me, I'll be able to share some pictures and let you guys see the space. But the theme is Ocean Odyssey, and the kids will be able to come, and it'll be an underwater theme. And so, yeah, I'm very, very excited.
That sounds amazing.
That sounds really cool.
Amazing.
That sounds really cool. So the Banana Moon is where you can get all of this information, whether it's, it sounds like like you said, any platform except for LinkedIn. And you can connect with her and see all the good work that she's doing in the community, all the ways that she is creating a world. Even I do not ever downplay the gifts of social media, in the sense that people can add beauty and joy, like in what they're doing. And even like your Instagram, like you are adding beauty into the spaces, and you are adding, ideas and encouragement and things that like, hey, look what's out here in our city. Look what's out here in this world. Look at what's going on. And I think that is no small thing, to be someone that curates and puts together beauty in a way that adds value to us in our lives. Because again, this world can be ugly. So even if you follow, and just to check out all the things that she's doing, but even just the way that Kiara just adds, again, beauty to, here's this beautiful cocktail. Here's this beautiful, like those are, again, that's not small. Those are big things.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We did it.
We did it. This is our first episode.
I know.
Started with a bang.
You guys. Proud of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Proud
you.
of you too. Me too.
Will you guys, I guess you guys can't tell me, but I really want to hear about an Enneagram 1. I'm married to one of those.
Okay.
So I would love to hear more.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have episodes.
You could, go back. Season 1 was when we like kind of went around and did some explaining and teaching about each type. And then last season, we had a really dope Enneagram 1 on as a guest, Dio, who is just incredible. She's an Enneagram teacher, and she's a believer. And so she kind of incorporates all of that in her work. So you can listen to her. And then we will have another really dope Enneagram type 1 on this season. We have Bestie.
All the episodes are tied, like it'll say Enneagram 1. So then you can just kind of go to those and see and deep dive into what, we talk about for each of those numbers. And even the interview is with the type 1.
Okay. Yeah.
Yay.
I'm excited.
I'm excited. All right, Kim, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I mean, that's a wrap. So we'll see y'all in the next episode.
See you on the next episode.